This is a small preserved green space I recently discovered in Cyberpunk. It's protected by glass because it's one of the few areas in Night City where you can find natural plant life. People walk past it on their way to work, kids even play on top of it, and yet, instead of leaving the grass as it is, corporations made sure to surround the area with ads. If you look closely, you can even see the plants obstructing some of the screens, which makes the whole thing feel even more absurd. So that's the moment I realized that, in Night City, ads tell the story of a society where no place is left untouched by corporate greed, and where citizens pay the price in more ways than one. Whether you drive or walk in Night City, you're constantly bombarded by advertisements because every single space is used for profit. What this reveals is that the primary function of buildings is no longer to offer space for people to live in, but to display commercials instead. And this is how we end up with ads floating above buildings, above the city itself. It's as if the city has become nothing more than a giant billboard, its architecture reduced to a support structure for advertisements. So the beams projecting ads into the sky are not just visual noise, they tell us something essential. In Cyberpunk, the one thing that's literally above humans and above the city is consumerism. The overwhelming push to make people consume is such that ads become part of the scenery, almost like a comforting presence. This is known as a mere exposure effect, a psychological phenomenon where repeated exposure to ads leads people to develop a preference for products or brands simply because they become familiar. In Night City, you experience so many commercials on a daily basis that you start becoming numb to them, no longer having the energy to question or reject them. Notice how the ads you see in the game are extremely simplistic, usually centered around one idea that can be understood at a glance. People's attention is so fragmented that advertising has evolved from something that required focus and interpretation into something based on immediate recognition. You don't need to stop and understand the message anymore. You only need to recognize the image or the brand. And once you have seen it hundreds of times, it becomes fully assimilated because of the repeated exposure you have of it. And so the commercials of Cyberpunk highlights how people are treated by corporations as consumers being fed absurd amounts of advertising in the name of profit. In that context, you, the spectator, are the product now. In the eyes of corporations, you're nothing more than a receptacle for advertisements, and your attention is constantly being sold to the next bidder. In Night City, your need for rest and quiet is not respected. Going on a walk is no longer a relaxing moment, as it becomes yet another opportunity for corporations to buy your attention. At that point, you're no longer a citizen, you're a walking consumer. But once we accept the dystopian nature of this city and start looking closely at the ads themselves, we can see that every single one of them offers a unique perspective into Cyberpunk's world, its values, but also its citizens, their struggles and their dreams. We often think of ads as an idealization or exaggeration of our world, as a spectacle that's alluring but ultimately fake, although, behind the artifice, ads also reveal some crucial truth. They offer a unique window into this futuristic society. Take this ad about real water, for instance, showing a hand holding a glass filled with what looks like refreshing water, and the image alone could make anyone thirsty. But the real story behind it is this. What are people drinking on a day-to-day basis if clean water itself has become a brand that needs to be bought? Notice how the background is brown, suggesting that the world surrounding it is incredibly polluted, except for that real water which has now become a luxury item, something reserved for those who can afford the price tag. When after seeing this we stumble upon this other ad showing sink water so contaminated that it's now green, we begin to understand that drinkable water has become rare in Night City. The grotesque exaggeration of these ads hides a disturbing truth. Millions of lower-class citizens no longer have reliable access to clean water. Moreover, we can read in the corner of the ad a small line indicating that this offer doesn't apply to citizens living in Pacifica, the poorest district of Night City. In other words, even access to real water is stratified. These ads, however comical or exaggerated they may seem, ultimately act as a mirror reflecting the harsh inequality people face in this world. Look at this other commercial promoting a high-speed transportation system, allowing people to travel from Chicago to Night City by train in under 3 hours, worry-free. The city burning in the background makes the ad feel satirical and a way for CD Projekt to comment on how dystopian the world in Cyberpunk has become. But the ad also reveals something about the mindset of the upper classes in this society. As long as they feel safe and comfortable, quietly reading their journal in a luxurious cabin, the world around them can literally burn and they wouldn't care. What initially appears as satire becomes far more disturbing when it starts revealing a deeper truth about this society. But there's something even more disturbing happening in the real water commercial and the high-speed train one. Both are selling solutions to problems that the very system creating them refuses to solve. Real water exists because the environment has collapsed. The high-speed train exists because the world outside is dangerous. So these products don't fix the crisis. They privatize survival by turning collective catastrophe into individual purchase. To put it differently, Night City doesn't eliminate problems, it monetizes them. If water is polluted, you don't regulate corporations, you sell real water instead. If cities are collapsing, you don't rebuild them, you sell faster escapes instead. These products don't promise to change the world, instead they promise to shield you from it. This is where the Cyberpunk devs use satire as ideological critique. The ads normalize inequality, not by denying it, but by making it pleasant to look at. The world's collapse is no longer shocking, as it's now cinematic, and when disaster becomes aesthetically pleasing, it becomes consumable. That may be the most unsettling function of advertising in Cyberpunk. It trains citizens not to solve systemic problems, but to emotionally adapt to them, to accept them as the background noise of modern life. The message is subtle but relentless. The world is broken and you can't fix it, but you can buy something that makes it easier to live with. And that shift might be one of the clearest signs that Night City has fully surrendered to corporate logic. One of my favorite in-game commercials is from Moore Technologies, a Swiss manufacturer of cyberware famous for its full-body conversions, like the woman we can see sitting on a burning wreckage without a care in the world. The statement, "body without limits," is crucial in helping us understand how the human body is perceived as a limitation we're expected to overcome. This idea becomes even more blatant in another ad stating that, to get a job, you need cybernetics. Otherwise, you'll be left behind, unable to produce as much as those who upgraded their body. Interestingly, most of the ads in Night City show augmented bodies. They reveal how corporations cultivate insecurity, pushing people to believe that their natural body isn't enough. Notice how you don't get cybernetics because you're replacing an arm you lost. You get them because you want your body to match your ambition, because you don't want to fall behind. Some ads across the city play with this idea, including a few that explicitly tells you to leave your limits behind by embracing cyberware. In this city, the normal human body is thus framed as weak and obsolete, despite the fact that cyberpsychosis is a recognized mental illness caused by excessive augmentation, something we clearly see with characters like David Martinez in the TV show Edge Runners. Yet just as much as body augments fascinate people, they also frighten them. One ad for Braindance, titled "Foreign Body," plays directly with that fear, invoking the anxiety people feel about technologies being inserted directly into their flesh. All this imagery suggests that the human body is perceived very differently from how we see it today. In Cyberpunk, the body is almost treated as a traitor. When in its natural state, it limits our ambitions, but once modified, it can also betray us through malfunction, containing a foreign element we have to worry about. Either way, these in-game ads reveals a complicated and often toxic relationship people have with our bodies in 2077. What all these ads reveal is that in Night City, we aren't meant to listen to our body or understand it. Instead, the body is a vessel we tame and change according to our desire, which ultimately leads to the Mikoshi program, through which a person's consciousness can be extracted and inserted into a new body. Saburo Arasaka does this with his son Yorinobu, taking his body and inserting his soul in it, which, despite how tragic this is, shouldn't be that surprising to see in a society advertising bodies as a mere commodity. Crucially though, we also have to understand what cybernetics introduce and how they reshape daily life in Cyberpunk. Like many major transformative technologies, cybernetics promise increased productivity. With implants, people can work faster and with less effort. In theory, this should free up time. But what is that free time used for? Well, to consume more ads, of course, to spend more time looking at screens, just like we do when we scroll through our phones today. It's fascinating to see how society's push for people to enhance their bodies in order to produce more and free up time hides another goal, redirecting that attention back toward ads and consumerism. In that sense, I can't help but think of The Matrix in this moment, because when the films first came out, the idea that humanity could be controlled by machines nurturing us from birth to death seemed absurd, and yet Cyberpunk's futuristic society begins to resemble that nightmare in a different way. People are constantly fed products to buy, images to admire, artificial distractions to consume, while gradually losing control over their own lives. In The Matrix, machines used humans as a resource. In Cyberpunk, corporations use humans about the same way. Love it or hate it, the ads in Night City offer a new and fascinating form of environmental storytelling. Other games use ads as a way to tell something about their world, but Cyberpunk goes so far, contains so many of them, that they hit differently in this context, because Night City feels both very unfamiliar and dystopian, but also very close to home, given how we too consume a lot of ads on a day-to-day basis. In truth, Cyberpunk shows us a world that has succumbed to the spectacle. By spectacle, I refer to the notion the author Guy Debord introduced in his book, The Society of the Spectacle. For him, the spectacle is not a collection of images, rather, it is a social relationship between people that is mediated by images. What this means is that the ads in Night City don't just give us a glimpse at the products themselves, rather, they reveal something about people, about the relationships they have to products, to other people, to themselves, and to the world around them. That relationship has evolved over time, and because of the accumulation of ads across the city. The more ads are in the city, and the more people begin interpreting the world and themselves through these images, the more they constitute a sort of reference through which people view and understand reality. You may be conscious of the effects ads have on you, but the fact is that after seeing the same ad hundreds of times, it becomes part of you. It becomes a part of your vocabulary with which you view the world and the people around you. So this is a moment where we need to get much deeper, but I promise this is going to be interesting. Up until now, we've said that ads in Night City are fake. They look fake, they exaggerate reality, and yet they're everywhere. They shape the city skyline, they shape what we see every day. But here's the problem. Even if I know an ad is fake, that knowledge doesn't cancel its effect. The more I see the real water ad, the more everyone else sees it, the more the water in that ad starts to feel real. Not because I bought it, not because I tried it, but because I recognize it. Recognition is immensely powerful for ads to be efficient. The moment I look at that image and think, that's real water, I'm doing exactly what the ad wants me to do. I'm confirming its meaning, I'm validating its existence. Then someone else does the same, and someone else after that. Very quickly, we're no longer just looking at an image, we're collectively agreeing on what it is. Once we collectively agree, the ad becomes true in a social sense. For that water to feel real, it doesn't need to be pure water. It doesn't even need to be better than normal water. It just needs to be seen, repeatedly, by enough people, until its meaning feels obvious. That's the genius of Cyberpunk's ads. It sounds absurd to advertise real water, but after seeing that image dozens and dozens of times, something shifts. That brand becomes a reference point. From then on, other water brands are compared to it. Other waters start being questioned, start feeling inferior and maybe even less real. The thing is, our perception of the product has changed, and perception, when shared collectively, becomes reality. There's something deeply subliminal about that process, especially because it's amplified across days, weeks, months. You don't think about it happening, but repetition quietly does the work for you. Let me use a real-world example for my point to be as clear as I can make it. Most of you have probably seen ads from the company Liberty Mutual. Without thinking too hard, you can probably say what they're about: saving money, car insurance, lower rates. Now, here's the interesting part. The more we see those ads, the more we instantly recognize them as the company that helps you save money. And the more we recognize that message, the less we question it. At some point, the idea that Liberty Mutual saves you money stops feeling like a claim and starts feeling like a fact. Whether it's true or not becomes secondary here, because truth in advertising isn't built on evidence, it's built on recognition. We may never choose to get insurance from that company, we may never even research their actual rates, but in our minds they remain associated with savings, and that's exactly how ads in Night City operates. They don't need to convince you logically, they just need you to see them enough times so that their message becomes familiar, and once it becomes familiar, it becomes believable, and once it becomes believable, the ad stops being just an image and becomes real. Did you know that the etymology of advertisement comes from the French term avertissement, which means to make aware, to direct at, and to call attention to? So the word advertisement refers, at its core, to the act of grabbing attention, of capturing someone's gaze. Even more interesting is the fact that modern mass advertising, as we know it, took form in the 19th century, when companies began using street walls to call the attention of people walking through the streets. At the time, seeing an ad was enticing precisely because there were not many around. But in Cyberpunk, it's a reverse. The background of the city has faded away, and ads have become the primary thing we see when looking at Night City. In a world obsessed with showing you as many products as possible, everything that exists, everything you interact with, think about, long for, or even conceive in your wildest dreams, becomes a commodity. For the 19th century author Balzac, what happened when everything became a product to be sold on the marketplace was a gradual loss of beauty, because even beauty itself had to be commercialized. Ads were the heralds of this new capitalist society, revealing that nothing was beyond sale, that the value of things no longer resided in what they brought to people, but in how marketable they appeared in the eyes of others. And I mean this literally. Advertisements attracted the eyes of passerby and redirected their desire, not toward truly experiencing something, but toward wanting to possess it. As such, ads are seductive. They promise more than they deliver. They sell an image before they sell a product. And what people ultimately consume is not the thing itself, but the dream attached to it. The object becomes secondary since what truly matters is a desire it generates. And once desire becomes a commodity, the world slowly transforms into a marketplace of attention. In Cyberpunk, ads serve the same function as in the 19th century, except this time there are so many of them that they swallow the world whole. Every surface, building, streets, and even the sky itself are screaming to attract and retain our gaze. As a result, ads no longer interrupt reality because they replaced it. They're no longer something we glance at between two views of the city. No, in fact, it's a reverse. The city becomes something we look at in between two ads. In such a context, architecture becomes a frame for billboards. The skyline becomes a projection screen and public space becomes advertising space. Reality itself becomes secondary to the images layered on top of it. And in Night City, there's no real escape from it. With cybernetics, screens can follow you into your own body. And even without implants, there's nowhere you can stand where a logo is not glowing or pulsing in your direction. Which leads to a crucial question. If we're constantly trained to look toward the brightest image or the loudest promise, can the world itself still move us? Can something as quiet as nature still compete? Can we still care about nature if it can't advertise itself? Can we fall in love with something that doesn't try to sell us anything? The tragedy of Night City is that its citizens have been conditioned to seek stimulation, to feel uncomfortable in silence, to measure value by visibility. But in a sea of shiny things, nothing can feel special anymore, and we're losing our ability to marvel at things that are meant to capture us. So Night City isn't terrifying because it's futuristic, it's terrifying because it feels familiar. Because we too are surrounded by glowing surfaces competing for our gaze. We too are learning, day after day, to confuse recognition with truth. And so when you walk through Night City and see those ads floating above the skyline, remember this. They're not just selling products, they're also changing the way we see the world. But it doesn't have to be this way. If you ever spend time in a nomad camp outside the city, you may have noticed how there's no ads around there. There's computers, screens, cars, and weapons, yes, but also mostly people. People who, compared to the busy crowds of Night City, interact with each other, talk, help one another. They're no longer forced to stare at the shiniest products. And while nomads aren't perfect, we can see among them a glimpse of a life we could reclaim. A life that becomes possible again when we dare to use the one thing that cannot be consumed because it needs to be nurtured: our imagination. Thank you for joining me in exploring advertisements in Cyberpunk and beyond. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing, commenting, and liking the video. I'll see you in the next one.